What's up, Lucky Gamers? This is Lucky Lux. Today we're going to be talking about the crit team, similar to how I did the poison team. Going through the several updates and just really talking about characters that impact it the most. So let's go ahead and get into the video. Alright guys, so I will say with the crit team, I'm mainly going to be talking about characters that are directly affected by crit. Because there are endless possibilities for what you can make a crit team with. And so someone will have opinion most likely and be like, oh, well, this character can be affected by it. Look, I'm going to be talking about characters that will either have like an insight in there that gives them decent base crit, or I feel like they can just be really impactful towards it. Like, I'm not going to just, like, mention, like, if someone's like, yo, my Anna Lee DPS, if I pair it with the Tooth Fairy, is going to be an amazing crit character. Like, no, I'm not going to talk about, like, Anna Lee as a crit DPS. Now, as a support, yes, that's an option, right? But, anyways, let's go ahead and get this started. So, at the start of the game, I'm going to be talking, like, we're going to be talking about 1.0, 1.1, because 1.1 just came out, but 1.1 really didn't affect the crit team. So, when you start the game off, you have your 1.0 characters. When it comes to DPS, for crit, of course, we have Eagle. Eagle is going to be a very strong single target option for you in crit. She can, with her ult, it's whenever you give her more crit rate, anything that goes over that crit rate is going to exceed into crit damage. And so she's just able to get off a lot of single target damage for being a 4-star character, which is why I recommend, every other creator recommends, everyone recommends building Eagle, especially for your surface runs, because she's going to be an easy plant DPS that you can use. The resources that you get for her, and the resources needed for her, like, I believe they pretty much give it to you for free for the first few insights. And, like, for leveling up a 4-star, it really doesn't take that much. So she's a really great character to fit there, right? So in terms of DPS, great option. Lilia is going to be also another great option for the crit team. She gets like extra leech rate on her ult. She gets an extra follow-up attack with her her single target skill. She gives herself a lot of crit rate from like the side cube. She gets extra crit damage on her ult, or is that extra crit rate? But she's going to be a great character, pretty much made for the crit team. And then you have Regulus, who she gives herself her own buff, right? The Reckless. And she wants to go every other turn. But she's just going to be a really great character that can either be a support or a DPS because of how she works. She also, gives extra dodge. But she's going to be a crit character. And with her buff, any excess crit rate is going to go into crit damage. And she already gives herself 50% crit rate with her buff, right? So huge crit rate just from her. Aside from that, there's a couple other characters that have crit, like Bunny, but I'm really not recommending her at all. But for DPSs, that's what we have. Characters from 1.0 that were directly affected by crit, right? When it comes to support, your options, you have Eric, who on level 2 of her debuff gives crit defense, crit. She can allow you to crit harder and crit more often. I can't remember the buff names, but that's going to be Eric. So she's going to be a great support option. That's going to be kind of free to play if you're trying to just build straight into crit. You have Twin Sleep that allow you to crit harder. She reduces the crit defense of enemies. You also have Voyager, who can do the confusion debuff with her debuff. And then you have Matilda also does it, but we're not going to really mention her a lot. But those are going to be the main characters kind of for the crit team. And anyone else you can just kind of fit in there, right? So when it comes to 1.1, what do we have that affects the crit team? Not much, right? Well, nothing really at all. You can use Diggers as a support if you want, but but there's really no reason. Because again, if you're going all into crit, Eric and Twin Sleep are going to be kind of there for you. And then Melania has decent crit, like base, like she has like 10% base crit, but she's not made for a crit team. So I know someone's going to be like, oh, well, my Melania can crit. Even my Melania has 46% crit rate, but she's not made for crit. She can literally fit in a different team as well. And that's why I like specified that I'm not talking about other options, because Tooth Fairy can make anybody a crit character pretty much. So, yeah. And then Pickles, not really made for crit teams. You can use Pickles somewhere else, right? So that's 1.1 real quick, right? Now, 1.2, big patch for the crit team, kind of really defines everything going on. You have Blondie, which is going to be, I believe, hopefully, on the Tooth Fairy banner. And Blondie is a character that goes all into crit, which I'll talk more about her when she comes out and is announced. But she's going to be all in on crit. Tooth Fairy is really good because she can consistently give a confusion debuff. Also with her Insight 1, she is allowing you to crit harder and crit more often as well. So she pretty much just enables crit easier, which is why a lot of people talk about her, how she's meta defining and everything like that. Because if you're going for crit, like, she just makes it easy, and she's a healer. So like, you can still build a support to amp your damage up and everything, while Tooth Fairy takes care of that. Now, she does the same debuff that Voyager does. Does that mean that Voyager is completely power corrupt and useless? No. You need 2 teams in the game, so you can just use Voyager on a separate team, right? There are other ways that you can still use characters, guys. Like, you don't have to just be like, oh, well, Voyager's useless because Tooth Fairy comes. Like, no, it's just that Voyager can just be put somewhere else, right? There are multiple crit characters. You don't have to just build one super team, guys. You want to really build a couple teams. Just for different situations, right? But anyways, for the crit team, like, so going forward, when we talk about from 1.3 and 1.4, we're going to be putting Tooth Fairy there because she's going to be best in slot for the crit team, right? And then Changeling, where he talks about she's poison. Like, you can put her on a crit team, but she's poison. So that's 1.2, very impactful for the crit team. You get your healer, that makes everything easier. So 1.3, what changes in 1.3 for the crit team? So you have Shemaine, which is going to be a pretty insane universal debuffer, because he does 15% less mental damage and 15% less, 15% reduction in reality and mental defense. That's what it is. And the enemies take more damage. Very similar to Bjorn Bloom, right? With his debuff, it's going to be a mass debuff as well. And it's going to, the damage taken by all enemies is going to go up as you increase this ability. But also mainly is that his mass attack is going to be an attack that crit rate on the primary target is increased by 20%. And then excess crit rate is converted into crit damage, right? So he's just able to crit more often. If you get portraits in him, he becomes kind of insane. But he's going to be one of those characters that will be able to do a lot of AoE damage. You've probably seen some people talk about him being paired with Centurion. That is a very good option, but either way, he's a DPS. I mean, he's a support that can DPS, right? With a mass attack on his ult. It goes for crit, so he'll go on a team with like Tooth Fairy, and you can pair him with the DPS character. So he will be able to be used on the crit team. Essentially. And then for mental DPS, Black Dwarf can be a option for a crit character because she gets Insight 2, gives her some crit rate. She has some high single target. You could technically, it wouldn't be the best option for her, but you could give her Thunderous, right? To just give her more crit damage on her ult and crit rate if you want to do that. There's better options, but you know, it is an option. If you want to make her all in the crit. But yeah, so I wouldn't really put her on the crit team, but you could put her with Pickles and Tooth Fairy, and she will hit really hard because she already has high scalings. So that's going to be 1.3 in Conjura. She's poison, so not even going to mention her. So 1.4 is going to be another impactful patch, similar to like how 1.2 is impactful for like crit and poison. 1.4 is also going to be impactful for crit and poison. Because you have 37 who was here in the first half. 37 is a crazy character because she does Genesis damage. Genesis damage, guys, is true damage. It's not diminished by any defenses or anything like that. It does what it does. It's consistent damage. And what makes her special is that she's able to crit it. If you see me play on my CN account, you've seen what 37 can do. Her on I3, she can crit. So she's one of those characters that you really want to get to I3 because she gets 20% extra crit rate and crits all of this. I also have a portrait of her that gives her an extra 20%. It's kind of crazy. And then her Insight 1 also allows her to get, whenever she gets 5 stacks of Eureka, she does a follow-up attack. It does AoE damage plus Genesis damage. And you can get extra stacks with characters that do a follow-up attack. What's a character that does follow-up attack that's on the crit team? Lilia. So that's why you'll see teams with like Lilia, 37, and Tooth Fairy, which is going to be a really crazy team. You can also do Regulus 37 and Tooth Fairy because the way that Regulus is a very AP friendly character, you can pair her with 37, and then 37 can do the buff with their ult to give the extra attack. And then, you know, you can do Regulus's AoE ability, do some damage. Same thing with like Lilia. Lilia will really love this attack increase because attack buffs don't really happen. Like everyone has like damage del and extra like just like lowers their damage, but not a lot of attack percent buffs, which helps out crit characters because that base attack will allow them to crit even harder than just a damage dealt, right? But anyways, 37 is going to be pretty much made for the crit team. 6, not really. You know, being he's like a straight up gotcha RNG character, it's not really consistent. So he's more for like just a whole debuff team, not really made for the crit team. And the crit team doesn't really have a lot of debuffs going on. So 6 isn't going to really be made for that. Poison team is going to be where he's going to really shine. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much going to be what's going on for the crit team. And like I said, like there are endless possibilities, especially when you think of like, oh, well, I have a Tooth Fairy and I have like Thunderous or some other crit side cube. So like they could fit too. It's like, yeah, like there's Centurion, there's Eternity that people are going to say like, oh, well, they can crit if I pair with Tooth Fairy. Yeah, but they're not directly affected by crit. Like it's not built into their kit like some other characters. If there's any other crit character that I mentioned, please let me know down in the comment section too, because I'm pretty sure I missed somebody. But if you found this video helpful and it kind of gives you a plan for what you want to do for the crit team, please like the video and sub up because I'm going to be doing this for some other teams. There are some other teams I want to think about and do that I've just seen. And some people have been saying like, well, like, what's so crazy about this team? Do I have to be like, guys, this just gives you options. It just kind of gives you a plan for like what you're looking for per patch. You don't have to do this. It's just very helpful to those who are unsure of what direction they want to go with their accounts. And that's all this is. It's just like kind of like a action plan for how you want to summon, how you want to save, what are you looking for, right? And you can there determine what characters that you want, right? So like that's all this is. So again, just try to do it to help. Try to do it to help out. Make sure you join the Discord. It's growing and growing and growing. I think we're over I think we're almost to 500 members. Because I came into this with like less than 200. I think we're up to 500. So guys, keep joining. It's growing. It's one of the best R99 Discords we have. And I just did a giveaway. So if you join, you never know. Might be in the next one and you might win. But anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. You lucky gamers, have a good one. Lucky Lucks out.